and welcome to Afro Mavericks. My name is Map Asika Mura and I'm with Jamie Mighty.
Yeah.
And today this is season 1.
Episode 1,
before you correct me. Okay. And today we're discussing the January 8th ANC speech. I just want to find out from you, what was your first take on the speech?
So my first take or my biggest impression was actually this Eskom situation. Because what the president said seemed to indicate to me what the marching orders are going to be for Eskom.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the strategy with Eskom is actually privatization.
Okay.
It's marginalization. What do I mean by this? This whole power through private power provision.
Yeah.
That is what I think the agenda is going to be moving forward, to get these independent power producers onto the grid. Now, with me and thinking through it, I was like, okay, it doesn't seem to me like there's a serious effort to fix Eskom, but there is a serious effort to get private players into the field.
Yeah.
Why am I saying there's no serious effort to fix Eskom? One, the war room. This whole war room thing has never been a legitimate thing. It's just ANC spin. So now they say to us, one, DT is going to be heading the war room, and I'm talking about the Deputy President, DT Mabuza. Now, come on, guys. DT Mabuza is not an engineer. He's not a corporate manager. He's not a project manager. He has no expertise in energy of any capacity whatsoever.
Yeah.
How is he going to be like the go-to guy, the point man for fixing Eskom? So that should say to me, there's no fixing of Eskom which is going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? In this war room, at least. I mean, Cyril was also in the war room. So war room for me means don't even think anything is going to happen.
Yeah.
But now when I look at what was being said is that green sources, private power. This to me said, listen, the agenda now is to have competitors to Eskom. But my worry is the narrative that we're given is that this is going to help create a competitive environment. Unfortunately, this is what they call network infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, it's very expensive to get into. The nature of the industry makes it an oligopoly.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means that there are only ever going to be a few competitors. And when you have a few competitors, it doesn't necessarily mean that the system becomes more efficient. It doesn't necessarily mean that prices go down. What's my example for this? When you look at the mobile providers.
Yes.
You know, data is still expensive.
Yeah.
Many of those networks are still inefficient. So that was my first big takeaway when I was looking at the biggest problem we're all facing, which is power provision.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this seems to be the strategy coming from the presidency. It's going to be marginalization of Eskom, not privatization of Eskom.
Which is quite interesting. Look, I think maybe just to be the devil's advocate, the fact that DD Mabuza or DD Mabuza is the head of this war room is the fact that he's the political head, not necessarily like in terms of the technically this is the person who will bring change. I think it's just politically this is the person who will be brought in. Yeah. But I think for me, the first take of the entire situation was the fact that this was held in the Northern Cape. Yeah. And what's currently happening, you know, the relationship between the ANC and the Khoisan, the fact that the Khoisan chief is still on the Union Buildings lawn protesting.
Exactly. That's actually powerful.
Wanting the Khoisans to be the first nation of South Africa.
Yeah.
They want their land back. They want their languages to be official, which is actually one of those things that you think Khoisan should absolutely 100% be one of our official languages.
Of course.
But it isn't. So they justified in that one point. I absolutely support and I agree that's brilliant. Although I do think that we've got too many languages in South Africa and in Africa as a whole, I would prefer that we have only one language. Yeah. So, but that's a story for another day. That's another conversation in itself.
So let's dive into the Nkosi a little bit. So one of the things that I saw social media was discussing was the low turnout. Yeah. Do you think that the low turnout was as a virtue of the location or just indicated that they don't have a lot of support? Because I think the EFF did very well in the province. Yeah. So is this like a reflection of a loss of appetite for the ANC there, or was it a poor indication, or rather an indication of poor logistics? Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's 100% their support is, you know, decreasing in South Africa as a whole. So also the Northern Cape situation just with the Khoisans and also just, you know, I think Zamani Sol has been that figure of, look, the expropriation of land without compensation, and he's been driving that. And also to speak to the fact that Sol Plaatje, that's his resting place. So land has been a very hot contention in that province as well as in South Africa and in the conversation.
So long and short of it, you think the people are tired?
Absolutely. I think the people are tired of the ANC, but I think that, in the history of politics, the political party that fought the struggle and that's first on the ballot is the one that will run the country for the longest time. So I think lower turnout is absolutely 100% a result of declining support in the Northern Cape.
Gotcha. So let me ask this question, because before we go too far, the other Mkosi or the other human interest factor was Duduzane being there.
Yes.
I mean, besides it being interesting, I saw a lot of people taking selfies with Duduzane, there as a proxy for his father. What impact does that have, if any? Because Jacob Zuma, former President Jacob Zuma, wasn't there. What is the implication here of Duduzane being the go-to guy?
100% the significance is that he is his father's proxy.
Yeah.
So this shows that, the Zuma family or faction is still alive and well within the ANC.
Yeah.
So, and just to show that this is a very popular man.
Yeah.
Especially with the ladies. But I think it's just to solidify the fact that, look, Zuma is still around. This is an extension of himself.
So Zuma was saying, I'm in the neighborhood.
I might not physically be there, but an extension of myself is present to represent me.
So let's do this, right? Before we go too far, what are the strengths that the ANC has right now in status quo? Because I don't want anybody to say we were anti-ANC.
Can we start with the weaknesses?
No, let's go with the strengths. Let's really dig in. I have my list. Should I go first?
Go first.
All right. So here's my list of the strengths of the ANC as it exists right now. Number one, 108 years as an organization is impressive. Very few companies last that long. Very few political parties last that long. It could even be the oldest political party on earth, right? So
we'd have to verify that.
To regenerate your organization for that period of time, that is impressive. That's number one. Number two, they did actually succeed in giving South Africa a robust democracy and a robust constitution. So I would actually go as far as saying this is the best democracy in Africa and this is the best constitution in Africa. I mean, gay rights were institutionalized in 1994. You have all of the freedoms that people are still fighting for all around Africa in South Africa. So I would say that. Number three, I would say that South Africa's performance in comparison with the rest of Africa on the Global Competitiveness Index is impressive. They're second in Africa, and I think the other countries like Mauritius, that it does a little bit better. But in terms of the size of the economy, to be at that level in terms of global competitiveness, that was impressive. I want to say they've increased power supply, they've increased water supply, they do provide NSFAS, they do provide the no-fee schools, and all of those things are quite strong assets that have come through as a result of the ANC government. Additionally, the ANC has a strong brand, they have a strong legacy, and they still have a strong youth presence across the country. So those are the things I would say, and they've been able to influence African politics to one degree or another. Even the fact that they're getting the 2020 AU chairpersonship is something that speaks to ANC's continued strength, because we're in Nkosazana performing a critical role, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, excuse my young disrespect there, performing a critical role with the AU before, and now the chairpersonship is moving to Cyril Ramaphosa after Egypt obviously cedes it. I think all of these things are like strengths of the ANC, and they should never be taken away. Whatever we are about to say about the ANC, let us anchor these ones. I don't know, what do you think?
I'll just add this. I think I respect the ANC for the fact that in terms of presidential limits, we haven't had a case where one president
there's been transitions, right?
So the transitions have been smoothish, okay. But I don't mind the lack of smoothness that's been there, because it's been politicians grabbing power from each other
as well. It hasn't been like a side.
So no one has exceeded their term of,
and no one is taken illegitimately.
Exactly. So I respect them for that.
That's
for
amazing.
Respecting democracy in that sense. For the democracy that we have, I can give that one thing I can give to them.
There's also something I want to say, but then we'll move to the weaknesses. The ANC is brilliant at diagnosing South African problems, be it poverty, inequality, apartheid legacy, lack of power. If you ask the ANC what's wrong in South Africa, they will give you an excellent diagnosis that no one will disagree with.
I get it, but I feel like at the same time, I feel like you can ask anyone on the street.
That's true, but you have to give them credit because they're not lying about what the status quo is. If you ask them,
because they've caused some of the problems.
Yeah. So now let's move to the weaknesses.
Yeah.
Because we covered the strengths. I think we can all agree these are ANC strengths. Let's move to the weaknesses.
Straight from the back, the fact that they can diagnose their lack of implementation. That's my biggest problem with the ANC.
I hear you.
100. I think beneficiation has been thrown out there a lot. The expropriation of land without compensation has been thrown out there a lot. But in terms of actually implementing the things that that they want to, it's been a struggle. Quite a struggle, and I think that's the biggest problem with the ANC is that as much as we talk, the support is declining, the core of it is that there are promises that they made, but they were unable to fulfill them.
I feel you. So my ones, or rather, I don't know, don't worry about the English. So here are my weaknesses identified. Number one, I don't believe the ANC when they say corruption will stop. I think corruption is a big weakness, and I've made a commentary on that already. I think factionalism is a big weakness, and even though we didn't see it explicitly advertised, Duduzani's being there was like a little highlight on the divisions that continue to exist as a result of Nasrec. You've got ACE and them in their camp, so the factionalism in the ANC speaks to a divided house, and the adage goes, a divided house cannot stand. I think we all can contest that. And they do have declining support. And I do think that we can't ignore the fact that their support has been declining. In addition, they have strong opposition in critical areas. So one of those areas is the youth vote. Even though they still have a lot of youth participation across universities and in communities, I think that the EFF has taken their lunch. Their youth structure is basically non-existent. We saw the president greeting the Youth League, or was it, who was greeting? It was
the Youth League.
Yeah, so the president he gave a greeting to the Youth League, but they are not existent right now. Their structure is basically a shadow of its former self. And the EFF basically has absorbed all of that oxygen. And I think these are weaknesses which threaten the long-term longevity of the organization.
Okay, now my question is, outside of universities, how can the ANC Youth League mobilize the youth? How do you do that?
Well, I think the first thing is that they do need to have their structures in place. And right now, the branch, it's disorder, it's chaos. Dissolving that leadership structure under Julius Malema, putting these weak structures in replacement.
Never been able to recover.
Exactly, because you need to have robust organizational institutions and mandate. Then you can go into communities and try to create a program. It seems to me, though, that the ANC is actually afraid of the youth, because the youth are the most affected by the challenges that the ANC is identifying. Unemployment, poverty, inequality, especially when you look at asset and income inequality. It most adversely affects young people. Young people are the ones who are still staying with their parents, still catching taxis, still doing piece jobs, if at all doing any jobs. Adversely affected by mental health issues, adversely affected by being in these rough neighborhoods. So I think that they are scared of, let's call it a Mcebo Dlamini effect. If a Mcebo Dlamini were to emerge in the youth,
Mcebo Dlamini is part of the ANC. So why has he been unable to mobilize?
Well, I mean, they squashed it last year, but I'm saying, if they're afraid that if you have Mcebo type, because eventually or inevitably, whoever will lead the Youth League will be unable to prevent radicalization.
Could it maybe be the case that the ANC actually doesn't want the youth to mobilize?
I don't think they do. And the reason why I'm saying it is because of radicalization. You are not going to get 18, 19-year-olds coming from the townships of South Africa who are going to toe the party line. The moderate, let's take time, these things take time, party line. They're not going to be able to do
compromising on their own resolutions.
Exactly, because they have
on
to
their
keep
own
moving.
freedom charter.
Exactly. So they're scared of that. They don't want a Nelson Mandela energized youth league of, was it 1959? They don't want that. They actually, was it 48? I can't remember which year Mandela and them came into the youth league. We'll put it in the comments. But when they came in and strengthened that youth league, it was a very aggressive youth league. The youth league of Julius Malema was also very aggressive. And I don't think the Cyril Ramaphosa regime, or rather dispensation, has an appetite for that. What was I going to say? There are some outside weaknesses.
Yeah.
China. presents an outside weakness for the ANC because
For
it's taking everybody's lunch.
Yeah.
The trade war presents an outside weakness because that could lead to a global recession and just different trade deals being made which are not necessarily going to be to the benefit of Africa. And number 3 would be the drought.
Yeah.
We have a drought in SADC, and that's going to have some adverse impact. I think the Eastern Cape right now is feeling the pinch the most. We're hearing about people who don't have any access to water whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
it's
these,
not the Western Cape, so you're not really going to hear about it.
Yeah. So these are weaknesses that I'm spotting for the ANC coming from the outside and also internally.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add weakness-wise that we haven't mentioned or discussed?
I think I want to move right to the solutions for, if I can give them some advice.
Well, but before we do, let's critique the address.
Yeah.
Because I have a critique I want to offer.
Okay.
But maybe let me go in and then you add.
Yeah.
Because this is so. My whole thing with the ANC is this: the ANC will talk about progress that they've made, but the issue is the pace of the change. The improvements are so slow. They are negligible in terms of where the global community is. If the global community is moving at a 5% pace in terms of whatever that metric is that you're measuring, and you're moving at 0.5%, in 5 years, you will have improved 2.5%, but they will have improved 25%. So comparatively, your improvement means nothing. So if you just say, look, we've improved our basic education quality to say now 36.3% of our students get a bachelor's exemption, right? You're still not necessarily making a dent on education inequality because the pace at which you're moving is not sufficient enough to address the challenge that you're facing. So the gap is big, but the jump is not that big. And I find that that's one. Number 2, I think that, like you've mentioned it before, but the management of issues by the ANC is horrific. There's failure to maintain, be it ESCOM, be it other parastatals. This is a failure to maintain stuff, failure to manage money, failure to manage human resources. And the president will say, we're going to fix this, etc., but nobody believes them. And I think another critique I would say is that the ANC has a policy for everything. NDP, whatever you want, they've got a policy for it that they can refer you to. They'll say, now they were talking about what's the name of these municipal management programs.
Yeah.
So they'll talk about stuff. It'll be on paper, but whatever the ANC puts on paper means nothing because it's 5% implementation is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then where the ANC is brilliant is they are brilliant at massaging and sharing people. And sometimes they'll use buzzwords. I'll give you an example. So right now, if you're listening, they'll say 4IR. They'll talk about NDP. They'll talk about 5G. They'll talk about this new program for the municipal management. And they'll even play fast and loose with us in respect to the matric results. So they'll focus on the 81.3%, which is based on 30% as a pass mark, and say our kids are doing so well, when the reality is that the number of students doing maths has decreased. The maths performance has gone down. The physical science performance, number of students writing the exam has gone down, as well as the performance. Now, if you're talking about 4IR, but you've got less students writing maths, less students passing maths, you're sharing us if you're saying you're getting ready for that. But the ANC is brilliant at this. They'll have AKA, they'll have everybody talking about this stuff.
AKA said they must just leave him alone.
Now he's saying that. But I'm saying, like, if you think about historically how they perform, they will give you a narrative that is glowing on paper, but is not backed up by anything in reality. And that's my critique. They're too good at politics and too bad at administration. I don't know, you want to add?
Yeah, let me add and say, for me, ESCOM is the biggest one. I think how the president is planning, or
I have a shiny. I'm busy wiping my forehead here. I don't think it's classy, but please forgive me.
We need powder.
We need makeup.
We need
when
powder.
We have budgets. When we have budgets, we'll do this.
Yes, but look, he's way forward to me, like you were saying. The whole privatization thing was a thing. Like the EFF was like, oh, you don't privatize, we won't allow you. He was like, no, that's fine. I will just introduce competition and private players in the space.
Exactly.
So he was able to solve that. That's So in terms of, I think what they're not thinking about is how ESCOM can generate power, right? Renewable power, right? taking advantage of what Africa as a whole has to offer.
But also the messaging is weird, right?
The messaging is weird.
Because they keep changing the story. It was wet coal, then it was sabotage. Then now it's design challenges.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Because now it's like, oh, the power plants have got design challenges. All of these things say to me, we're not fixing that. What we're going to do, we're moving to this private thing. Because I mean, which one is it, right? So first it's like president was lied to. Then it's sabotage. Then it's not sabotage because sabotage only affected this number of megawatts, kilowatts. So I'm like looking at all of this and I'm like, then it's the conveyor belt at some point. And then it's like, no, Jacob Mabuza stepped down, so don't worry. And then I'm like,
he took political responsibility.
You guys are not serious about fixing this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you don't even know what your story is.
Yeah.
If a kid had like broken a window in the house and they had 7 different stories about how that window broke, they're getting beat.
So if you can't diagnose the problem, how will you fix it?
Oh, do you really want to fix it?
I don't think they want to fix it.
This is why I'm saying that there's a push for marginalization of Eskom, not necessarily restructuring and revitalizing Eskom. I don't buy that they're going to do it. What about jobs? Do you buy the jobs narrative?
Unemployment, I feel like there was a lack of clarity. It's the same thing. We'll focus on small businesses, the township economy, economic zones, manufacturing, they said agriculture, tourism, etc., etc. But there's no clarity in terms of how exactly will you eradicate or at least reduce unemployment.
They say it's based on the manifesto. They say 2019 manifesto, that's where you go. But then the question is, the president's messaging around unemployment has been changing. So first he launched YES. Remember that youth employment survey? Then they said we're going to produce this number of millions of jobs. Then the chairperson of YES, I think it's the former Investec CEO, he was like, Stephen Kosef, he was like, no, these numbers are unrealistic, we're not going to achieve them. Then the president then came and said, no, we're going to give you this number of jobs. Then later on he came last year and said, no, the numbers of jobs, you guys need to face reality. There's going to be a decline in the number of jobs. And then now 2020, its jobs are going to increase again. And I'm looking at you know what the statistics say. This is what the World Bank statistics are for South Africa in terms of GDP growth. This year, the economy is growing at 0.9%. That's the projection.
From that 1.5%.
From last year. Do you understand? The 1.5 which was projection. So now it's 0.9. Exactly. The forecast is 0.9. Go down. Our population is growing at 1.6%. So the economy is growing slower than the population. And in fact, for the last 6 years, the economy has been growing at less than 2%. Do you understand? So now, how are you going to get these jobs in a declining economy? Further than that, manufacturing numbers went down. Manufacturing went down by 3.6%, I believe the number is. And the auto vehicle sector went down by 10%. And it's an employer of many people. So now, where are these jobs going to come from? Because China's still going to be China. There's still going to be China malls in this country. And your automobile sector is going down. Your manufacturing is going down. Where are the jobs going to come from? Mining is not going to grow the jobs because there's no electricity.
Considering the fourth IR and Germany not really adapting to that in terms of electricity and how that's... But look, I think at the end of the day, and what I want to look at is the fact that in terms of unemployment, the core of industrialization, the core of development in any country is power, as in electricity. So if the president is unable to formulate a pragmatic plan for Eskom, there's absolutely no flipping way they can create employment. There's no way.
Which is what the World Bank said.
Yeah, especially if he's talking about small businesses being the way forward in terms of employment creation. It's not going to happen.
We have to get into manufacturing. Manufacturing is going down. There doesn't seem to be a plan for raising money. Let's talk about some of the side things. I'm going to tell you one of the things. So I personally don't think that, the ANC should be praising Robert Mugabe in any shape or form. That was like a pet peeve of mine in the speech. But beyond that, there's something that I noticed. The ANC invited the ZANU-PF to its address, a historic ally. It invited the BDP, a historic ally. It invited the Basotho National Party, a historic ally. But it didn't invite other political players except for one from also Lesotho, which is the ABC, which is the ruling party, the All Basotho Convention.
Yeah.
Now, that's where Tom Tabane's party, is the prime minister right now, Tom Tabane. That's his party, that's the governing party. I found it strange that they would invite one opposition party only to this particular Congress, because they invited also the ruling party in what's this, Angola, MPLA, the People's Movement for Liberation of Angola. And it got me thinking, is the ANC going to be able to, as the South African government, which is what they are right now, are they going to be able to help negotiate in places where there is democratic transition from old historic parties to new parties if they are not welcoming of those parties?
Because they're a historical party and they don't plan on giving away.
But they still have to play the role. You see, you're going in to become the AU chairperson, and you're going into a space where there are going to be elections. There's going to be some transitions of power one way or another. I actually would have preferred if they had invited all of the leading opposition parties. That to me would have said, we believe in the spirit of democracy. We're not going to pick sides. We're not going to choose ZANU-PF over MDC or other things. But we're going to invite you all so that when we have to broker, especially like if you look at Zim, there needs to be some kind of a real conversation around how to reboot that economy, how to reboot that democracy. And it's going to involve all of the major players, not the smaller political parties, but the MDC and the ZANU-PF. So if you invite just the ZANU-PF, how are you going to be able to execute on that agenda? Because now the MDC is looking at you saying, but you are unwelcoming.
But I think it also speaks to the declining power of South Africa, or rather the ANC, as a Pan-Africanist leader. African nationalist leader.
I got you.
So I think going back to basics, who the ANC was, it went to Tanzania, etc., and it enjoyed support in those countries. So seeing the rise of the EFF right now, and the 2 seats that they have in the Namibian parliament, so it's to speak to the fact that the ANC is no longer the political party that it used to be, the Pan-Africanist leader that it used to be.
Because it would have been more Pan-African, let's call it futurist Pan-African, to say, listen, the dynamics of African politics are also going to be coalition. So why are we only inviting the guys who fought with us,
the ruling parties right now,
instead of working with everybody? If we are going to have relationships with these players,
maybe a lack of vision might be a problem as well.
I would agree
on an
with that.
African continent, in terms of, they speak about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, how they're proud of it, they want it to work, but in terms of the ties, it's very shameful.
And there wasn't a lot of content around that.
There wasn't.
It's in the address as well, like the formal address that they put up on their website. But there isn't a lot of specificity
in terms
around
of
how South Africa is going to exploit or participate in that continental free trade area.
Exactly, 100%. So I think it's just a decline in who they used to be, and that's a very dangerous stance, considering that we are moving towards a more one Africa. If one currency
that's
is now
the agenda 20, what is it? Is it 2063?
2063,
so that's where we're going.
And the NDP is unclear in terms of one currency for Africa. It's a very touch and go topic. In that document.
And so the ANC is not doing well.
So I think maybe they're not even.
Wise.
It's possible that they're not even really interested when we talk about one currency, one Africa. We just test.
It's lip service.
Yes,
I got
they're
you.
good at that. Remember.
Yes, the lip service is strong, but the delivery is weak.
Poor.
So where are we gonna live it? What's your final thought?
we have to do better 5 years from now. We gotta do better. I think I want to see young people take their place, and when I say young people, I don't necessarily mean 25 or 40 years old. I want to see really, really young, mid-20s taking their place and participating in national politics. That's what I want to see. And I want to see the young people in these political parties saying no to being oppressed and keeping quiet, but actually taking a stand to what they believe in, so that the revolution can thrive. Basically.
Okay. So I think let's leave it here. We went a bit longer than we wanted, but hopefully you enjoyed the first episode of Afro Maverick. Subscribe, like, comment, participate in the discussion, and we'll see you in the next one.